Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the political commentator Adam Bolton and The Guardian's political editor Pippa Creer. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Well, let's see what is on some of those front pages. The Guardian leads with Israel's new ground operation in Gaza as international condemnation of the war grows. In the Eye, Nigel Farage is warning that the rise in state pension age is inevitable as the future of the triple lock is in doubt. The Reform UK leader is also on the front of the Daily Mail, saying Britain is facing societal collapse. The Telegraph reports that the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is demanding a tax on tourists. According to the Financial Times, the EU is drafting plans that would see the UK pay the bloc a portion of the proceeds from the sale of British weapons to a new cooperative defence fund involving both Brussels and Westminster. On the front of the Times, patients at risk during walkouts, warns the BMA. And as the Lionesses look forward to tomorrow's Euros semi-final, the Metro cheers, "Come on, England." And the Daily Star also roars on the Lionesses for tomorrow's big match against Italy. And we are joined tonight by Adam Bolton and Pippa Creer. Great to see you both. Let's start with that story that we were mentioning there, and that is this new ground offensive in a part of Gaza that actually had been left relatively, and it's all relative here, untouched, Deir al-Balah. Israel now launching this offensive on this part, and it comes at the same time as there is growing condemnation from the international community. Pippa.
Yeah, this seems to have escalated what is already a pretty desperate situation even further. And what happened overnight is that Israel launched these air raids and ground strikes against Deir al-Balah, which, as you say, is an area which had been relatively unscathed so far, in part because there was a belief amongst the Israeli military that that's where some of the remaining Israeli hostages are held. There's 50 hostages still unaccounted for. They believe about 20 of them are alive, and there was a suspicion that they might be there. It was also reported in the Hebrew media overnight that there was that a ceasefire, and we've heard this before, of course, but the ceasefire looked like it was closer. So the fact that this strike has now happened seems to once again have set that back. But this was also the territory's main hub for humanitarian efforts, and I think that in particular is what has prompted this fairly unusual response from, I think it's 25 countries plus the European Union, very sort of sharply critical response of Israel specifically in relation to this attack, given that is the destination. Deir al-Balah is where many Palestinians, Gazans, had moved because it was relatively unscathed. And it is particularly pertinent because we have seen, obviously, after 2 months of there being an aid blockade on aid entering Gaza, 2 million residents on the verge of starvation. Then the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, this Israeli and US-backed organisation, came in to distribute food. That's been pretty chaotic and in some cases deadly. And so for the centre for the remaining humanitarian provision to be targeted in this way seems particularly egregious, and obviously has prompted the anger of international allies.
Adam, what do you make of the actions by Israel, but also what we heard from David Lammy today?
Well, I think the problem is no one quite knows why Israel is targeting this area in central Gaza, which was seen as a sanctuary, unless it's part of some greater plan to sort of clear or make life difficult for everyone in Gaza. That hasn't been said. And as Pippa was saying, this was the area where food was distributed. And that really goes to the other issue as to why so often the Israeli Defence Force is firing on people queuing up for food. I mean, in this case, in The Guardian, reporting about shootings on Sunday of the UN Food Agency trying to distribute food. Of course, you know, the position of the Israelis, backed up by the US government, is that the UN shouldn't be distributing food. It should be this group which they set up themselves, but who do distribute food in an extremely haphazard way, it appears, leading people queue. And it's interesting, we've got the same picture of an air raid on Al-Nasra on the front of The Guardian, and a smaller version of it on the front of The Times. And The Times, as you say, quotes David Lammy, who made a statement today and saying it's absolutely unacceptable that there should be what he calls drip feeding of aid to Palestinians. And again, you know, the Guardian headline, Israel launches offensive on Gaza, aid hub amid fears of starvation. You know, people are, international statesmen, if you like, from these 24 countries are getting closer to saying that Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war, which, of course, would counter most understandings of the rules of war and effectively be a war crime.
Did you think, to both of you, that this was the strongest language we've heard from the government on Gaza?
Well, the Prime Minister was also talking today at the Liaison Committee today, and he was basically under pressure from the committee chairs who go to these sort of end-of-term sessions to say, couldn't you do more? And he was insistent that there already were specific sanctions in place on some members of the Israeli government, that there were also sanctions on exports of some defence material. So he basically said, you know, we're making our voice heard, but there's not actually more that we want to do against Israel.
And I listened to David Lammy in the Commons making that statement, and it is definitely the case that he sounded angrier than I've heard him, but probably because specifically about this attack. And I think also, I'm not sure frustration quite covers how he came across, because it's much deeper than that. This sort of feeling that Israel has, this condemnation of Israel for depriving Palestinians of human dignity. And he talked a bit about potential breaches, some of the proposals that have been made by some in the Israeli government as being potential breaches of international law. I mean, as Adam says, they're sailing pretty close to the wind now. The problem is, and we heard this from Labour MP after Labour MP, and in fact some Tory MPs in response to the statement, is that this feeling that words aren't enough, and that the British government has taken actions like sanctions against a couple of the Israeli cabinet. It has limited arms supplies beyond the ones that go sort of to the international operation directly to Israel. And it has taken other action. But there's this feeling, I think, that they think that the British government needs to go further, but also sort of impotence, really, because ultimately, if Benjamin Netanyahu is not prepared to act, the only country that can force his hand are the Americans, and there's no sign they're not part of this. They're not one of the signatories to this statement, and there's no sign that they're condemning it.
And as I say, there is still this sort of uncertainty as to what Israel's end game is in this situation.
Well, they replied to this letter by saying that it's disconnected from reality, so obviously not going to take it seriously. Adam, let's take a look at the Daily Telegraph, a story there about pension age could rise under Labour shake-up, and this is the next statutory government review into the pension age.
Yeah, this is Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, who is launching a review. Now, as everyone probably knows, pension ages are going up anyway. They used to be for men 65, they're now 67. They are due to go up to 68. But what Liz Kendall is basically saying is she's bringing forward the review again, and people are actually saying that possibly pension age could go as high as 74. Now, this is obviously because, as everyone points out, the burden of paying for current pensions falls on the current workforce, and more people are reaching retirement age, so there's more demand, and there's a fear there isn't the money. We've also got Nigel Farage weighing on the pension, which is quite interesting. I don't know how it will go down with his base, but he too is saying, in his case, he's saying that the triple lock, which leads to increases in the pension age, it's inevitable that the triple lock will have to go, and that also the pension age will go up. And it's really the first time that we've seen Nigel Farage actually talk about changes in welfare that could hit, middle-of-the-road voters.
It is interesting, though, isn't it, that he... this is just the latest example of somebody that is a, Thatcherite libertarian and has been for decades, taking a position on something which might be unpopular with his base. We heard it with their plans for nationalisation of water. We heard it with some of the state support for steel. And then this is the latest, suggesting that that pensioners may have to... that it's unaffordable, the system as it is, and people may have to work for longer. Frankly, I'm in my 40s, and I don't expect to be retiring any anytime soon. Well, certainly not anytime soon. Maybe not in my 60s. But the backdrop to this, of course, is that there's concern that people who are retiring in the 2050s are going to be worse off than those retiring today, that people aren't saving enough. Yeah. In some cases, people aren't saving anything for their retirement.
Oh, quite a high percentage, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's half of working age adults aren't putting any money into a private pension at all. Obviously, the state pension as well. Whether that still exists by the time I retire, I don't know. With low earners, self-employed, less likely to be pension saving. And there's also a gender gap as well, with women saving less. Yeah. So there's a ticking time bomb there, right? And it's one of these long-term issues that the government, structural issues that the government doesn't address.
I mean, it does seem to me, you know, there is a slight issue with this, which is the willingness of employers to keep people on to the age of 74. I mean, you know, particularly in white-collar areas, people are basically encouraged once they get over 60 to retire. So if they're not, you know, if they haven't got a big pension provision personally, where are they going to find the work? I mean, I did make this comment on social media and someone said, well, you know, here in the United States, 74 is practically the starting age for working in a supermarket. But I'm not sure everybody looks forward to their 60s and 70s.
For us,
Let's look at the Daily Mail, because Nigel Farage gave quite a wide-ranging speech today. The headline that they're picking is Britain is facing societal collapse. What does he mean by that, Pippa?
He's a bit catastrophising, to be honest, I think. I mean, I listened to this press conference, and this was actually the line that stood out to me, because I thought he was just giving people a little prod. I don't think Britain's facing societal collapse.
And he was talking about crime figures.
He was talking specifically about crime, but he's warning that he would halve, or sorry, he's saying that he would halve crime in 5 years if he became Prime Minister. But then he also talked, as I say, he talks about societal collapse, saying lawlessness is taking hold very rapidly, and highlights places like London, for example, which he thinks that, and other parts of the country, which he thinks are close to civil disobedience on a vast scale. But you know, this might be grabbing headlines, this presumably is his intention, but look closely at his claims. He says that crime has rocketed since the 1990s, that it's 50% higher than the 1990s. And he uses, as justification for that, he says that you can't look at the Office for National Statistic-backed or preferable measure, which is the crime survey. He describes that as false data. Says instead that we should be looking at police-recorded crime. And he says that actually the figures are bigger than the police-recorded crime because lots of people don't go to the police to report crimes. But precisely for that reason, that's why the ONS favours the crime survey. They consider it a more accurate metric of long-term crime trends because it includes incidents that aren't reported to the police, and also it's unaffected by changes in recording of crime which happen periodically. So fact-check him on this. He's wrong.
Yeah, he's very wrong. I mean, there are two ways recognised of recording crime, and both of them say crime's actually gone down rather than doubled over the period that he's there. I mean, I think what's really fascinating are the front pages of the Daily Mail
and the Daily Express.
And the Daily Express, its rival in the middle, you know, on the sort of right of centre.
They're not questioning
at all. They are
buying the line.
I mean, they are fully behind Nigel Farage. The Daily Mail today had a preview, basically, of his news conference, including an editorial by him. And you know, what his tactic is, remember, is to make these lurid claims, to tell people that everything's broken, and in the hope that they will say, well, we can blame Labour and the Conservatives for that. Why don't we try something different, Nigel Farage?
Yeah.
We're going to have to leave it there. Sorry, we're just going to move on. Coming up, should councils be allowed to tax tourists? The Deputy Prime Minister thinks so. We'll discuss that next.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
1, 2, 3, say
These southern boys are fixing critters.
This is the first peacock microchip.
You don't see many axolotls from everywhere. And there's no place they'd rather be. Hey, what's been going on?
Pretty big boys there.
Hakuna Matata.
Animals will find a way to get injured. How do you eat a whole sock?
The craziest ones find their way to critter fixing. Hey, let the journey continue. Appreciate you.
Brand new Critter Fixers start Sunday the 10th of August on Wild.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Adam Bolton and Pippa Creer. Adam, let's go to the front page of The Telegraph and a story about taxing tourists. The Deputy Prime Minister wanting tourists to be taxed by councils. What is this?
Well, Angela Rayner, is, of course, in charge of devolution, and what she's saying is that she wants tax-raising powers to be devolved to councils so that they can run their own affairs. Now, a lot of countries already have some kind of tax on tourists where there's mass tourism. They've already introduced it in Edinburgh. In fact, in some areas of Liverpool and Manchester, in business development areas, the idea is you pay €5 a night, which goes on your hotel or your Airbnb bill, and then that comes back to the government in tax. What the Telegraph is portraying this as is a battle within the government, within the Labour government, because it says that the Treasury and hospitality businesses are opposed to this idea because they're saying it would be bad for their trade. And Angela Rayner is stepping out of line, if you like, with Rachel Reeves by coming up with this idea.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that they've stepped out of line, as you so diplomatically put it, Adam. You'll remember about a month ago, there was a leak, also to the Telegraph, of a memo that, in fact, it was a couple of months ago, but a leak of a memo sent by Angela Rayner to Rachel Reeves. Goodness knows how it got out into the public domain. I mean, I really couldn't imagine how. But it was proposals for how she could put up taxes, wealth taxes in particular, at the budget. And there was no denial that that was her proposal. But of course, they tried to downplay it and say, well, look, every minister's got an idea and you know, it's up to them if they want to try and feed into the Treasury. The Treasury, of course, is trying to distance itself from the idea of sort of headline rate wealth taxes, where they would slap 2% on any wealth over 10 million quid, saying it would be difficult to apply. It would potentially force people to move their wealth out of the country, and that they're not likely to do it. But that's not stopping Angela Rayner trying, and this seems to be the latest part of that, as Adam says, in her devolution proposals, the devolution bill, suggestion that they want to give more fiscal raising powers, tax-raising powers, to local regions. And I think this is a really interesting point because Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer talk a lot about devolving power to the regions and seeing how that's important to take power back to people's communities, to make them feel more engaged and have more agency in the political system. Obviously, we've seen this sort of lack of faith that people have in Westminster politics, and yet they're not prepared to accompany it with fiscal power. So, you know, devolution of powers, but not devolution of tax raising.
And very interestingly, if you're looking at the Labour row, guess who's also in favour of this? The two most powerful mayors, Andy Burnham and Sadiq Khan, both want that. And I was actually at a talk earlier this evening with the head of the Victoria and Albert Museum, and he said, if some of the money's going to come back into culture, he's all for it as well. So.
Sure.
Let's go to the Times now, and the headline there, patients at risk during walkouts. That's a warning from the BMA, and it's the strike by resident doctors, formerly known as junior doctors, which is meant to start later this week, Pippa.
Yeah, so the backdrop of this, as you say, is this threat of strikes for the now called resident doctors, of course, formerly junior doctors, about 50,000 of them. And what the BMA is saying is that if the strike goes ahead, obviously they're the ones who are pushing it, that patients won't be safe because NHS leaders have decided not to cancel routine operations. Obviously, it's been a huge push by this government to bring down NHS waiting lists. So far, it's doing that pretty successfully. It's slow progress, but then the number of procedures was something like 7 million, something is a huge number, but it is heading in the right direction. And there are concerns that in the same way that doctor strikes last year added more people to the waiting list, so this would as well. So a decision's been taken by the NHS not to cancel routine operations. And in response, the BMA is saying, well, that means that doctors would be spread too thinly to provide emergency and urgent care. Obviously, a big concern of anybody who might end up going into hospital for emergency care in the coming days. Downing Street was saying today that discussions are still continuing with the BMA. They're not going to put up baseline pay, but there might be room for other types of compromise.
Adam, raise their pensions, aren't they?
I'd love to know what you think, Adam, but I'd like to also finish on this lovely front page of the Metro, which is about women's football and the Euros and the semi-final. Are you guys been...
Adam's a great fan, so I'm sure you're delighted to talk about it.
Well, what I do know is that it is, as you say, the semi-final against Italy this evening being played, I think, in Switzerland.
Tomorrow night, Tuesday.
In Geneva.
Well, I mean, tonight, according to the newspapers, actually. So they're part of the big build-up when you get your newspapers tomorrow morning. It was
slightly overshadowed, though, by the whole Jess Carter racism
It was,
issue.
and the team, as a result, have decided that they're no longer going to take the knee. Serena Wagnum, the coach, has said because they feel that the gesture is not having the impact that they might want it to, and that they'll find other ways of protecting her and the team. Hopefully they'll have a better reception tomorrow night at the semi-finals and she won't be subject to that same sort of behaviour.
We're going to have to leave it there. Pippa, Adam, thank you, and that's it. More at 11.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.